The Stand at Concord Bridge by William Emerson, 19th of April, 1775, 11:45 a.m. This morning, between 1 and 2 o'clock, we were alarmed by the ringing of the bell, and upon examination found that the troops, to the number of 800, had stole their march from Boston in boats and barges from the bottom of the common over to the point in Cambridge, near to Inman's Farm, and were at Lexington Meeting House half an hour before sunrise, where they had fired upon a body of our men, and, as we afterward heard, had killed several. This intelligence was brought us at first by Doctor Samuel Prescott, who narrowly escaped the guard that were sent before on horses, purposefully to prevent all posts and messengers from giving us timely information. He, by the help of a very fleet horse, crossing several walls and fences, arrived at Concord at the time above mentioned. When several posts were immediately dispatched, that returning confirmed the accounts of the regulars' arrival at Lexington, and that they were on their way to Concord. Upon this, a number of our minutemen belonging to this town, and Acton and Lincoln, with several others that were in readiness, marched out to meet them, while the alarm company were preparing to receive them in the town. Captain Minot, who commanded them, thought it proper to take possession of the hill above the meeting-house as the most advantageous situation. No sooner had our men gained it than we were met by the companies that were sent out to meet the troops, who informed us that they were just upon us, and that we must retreat, as their number was more than treble ours. When we retreated from the hill near the Liberty Pole, and took a new post back of the town upon an eminence, where we formed into 2 battalions and waited the arrival of the enemy. Scarcely had we formed before we saw the British troops at the distance of a quarter of a mile, glittering in arms, advancing towards us with the greatest celerity. Some were for making a stand, notwithstanding the superiority of their number, but others, more prudent, thought best to retreat till our strength should be equal to the enemy's by recruits from neighboring towns that were continually coming to our assistance. Accordingly, we retreated over the bridge, when the troops came into the town, set fire to several carriages for the artillery, destroyed 60 barrels flour, rifled several houses, took possession of the town-house, destroyed 500 pounds of ball, set a guard of 100 men at the North Bridge, and sent up a party to the house of Colonel Barrett, where they were in expectation of finding a quantity of warlike stores. But these were happily secured just before their arrival, by transportation into the woods and other by-places. In the meantime, the guards set by the enemy to secure the pass at the North Bridge were alarmed by the approach of our people, who had retreated, as mentioned before, and were now advancing with special orders not to fire on the troops unless fired upon. These orders were so punctually observed that we received the fire of the enemy in 3 several and separate discharges of their pieces before it was returned by our commanding officer. The firing then soon became general for several minutes, in which skirmish 2 were killed on each side, and several of the enemy were wounded. It may here be observed, by the way, that we were the more cautious to prevent beginning a rupture with the King's troops, as we were then uncertain what had happened at Lexington, and knew not that they had begun the quarrel there by first firing upon our people and killing 8 men upon the spot. The 3 companies of troops soon quitted their post at the bridge and retreated in the greatest disorder and confusion to the main body, who were soon upon the march to meet them. For half an hour the enemy, by their marches and counter-marches, discovered great fickleness and inconstancy of mind, sometimes advancing, sometimes returning to their former posts, till at length they quitted the town and retreated by the way they came. In the meantime, a party of our men, 150, took the back way through the great fields into the east quarter, and had placed themselves to advantage, lying in ambush behind walls, fences, and buildings, ready to fire upon the enemy on their retreat. Born on the 31st of May, 1743, the Reverend William Emerson, Sr. was a chaplain of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress and the minister of Concord. His home, today known as the Old Manse, was located next to Concord's North Bridge, where, during the unfolding events of the 19th of April, 1775, Reverend Emerson joined his fellow townsmen in their stand against the King's troops. With the commencement of the Revolutionary War, the Reverend Emerson left his wife Phoebe Emerson and their children behind in their Concord home and traveled to Fort Ticonderoga, where he served as a chaplain of the Continental Army. Within the year, he was stricken with camp fever and died on the 20th of October, 1776. 60 years later, his grandson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, would write these words to adorn a monument erected at the site of the stand at the Concord Bridge. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, there flagged April's breeze unfurled. Here once the embattled farmers stood, and fired the shot heard round the world. The foe long since in silence slept. Alike the conqueror silent sleeps, and time the ruined bridge has swept down the dark stream which seaward creeps. On this green bank, by this soft stream, we set today a votive stone, that memory may their deed redeem, when, like our sires, our sons are gone. Spirit that made those heroes dare to die and leave their children free, bid time and nature gently spare the shaft we raise to them and thee. This has been a reading of The Stand at the Concord Bridge by William Emerson, Sr. and The Concord Hymn by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Presented by the Barrow Bookstore, located in historic Concord, Massachusetts, home of the authors. Reading by Jamie Lee. The music is from the archives of the United States Army Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps. Thank you for listening. Join us next week for a reading of Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Birthmark.